Okay, so let's get started. Hey everybody, this is the Node.js tooling meeting. It's Friday, April 30th. Yeah, let's get started. What's first on the agenda here? I guess, does anyone have any announcements or anything before we get started?
Not really.
All right.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing.
I get confused because I'm on ComCom and then the CPC, and I'm like, what is related to this? I don't know if anything is, but so carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one thing that's kind of related. I don't know if we should talk about it or not, though.
Yeah.
Are we talking about package manager?
Yeah, that is kind of related.
Yeah.
I was interested in the outcome of that vote. So they decided not to package Yarn 1 with Node. But it seems like there's a lot of support to include Core Pack, it's called now, which would provide like shims basically for installing Yarn or PNPM or NPM or whatever. I guess NPM is still going to be bundled. Anyways, I was interested in the outcome of that decision. I'm happy with the direction. In my opinion, that is, I think, a smart decision.
I agree. I concur.
I do not agree, but I will give my sentiments and feedback somewhere else.
I'm curious which, if you, I don't know, maybe it's not something.
It's more on the technical implementation of the actual tool, and also the lack of definition around what a managed package is. So essentially it creates, and if you've played with it a bit, it actually introduces a number of new capabilities that actually might be a bit, in my opinion, harmful to those communities in terms of switching between tooling, especially given that they've actually introduced a new field package manager, which will essentially gate and is pretty anti-competitive in my opinion. So if you utilize Coreback, then if a Yarn user tries to run a Yarn command in a PNPM project, it's actually going to throw an error. And then beyond that, also there is an internal understanding or config of known good versions, which basically creates a brand new subset registry. So the ownership of that registry, how it stays up to date, is also in question. So I think there's a number of questions that I don't think they answered, and I think the TSC, I'm not sure why, we for the record, like I think a lot of us on our side sort of stayed out of a lot of that conversation, but I still have quite a bit of feedback to give, I think, and I appreciate that they're trying to find interesting new ways to like create an equal playing ground, but I think that this actually is a bad step. And it was weird that they voted no on including Yarn, especially given how much feedback and pushback there was in that discussion about including Yarn. And then they've created a net new tool to introduce any number of new packages. And it's, in my personal opinion, it's not a package manager, it's a package manager. So because they haven't delineated what the difference between a package manager and a package is. So anyways, that's my synopsis of the situation. So
okay. I mean, those are all good arguments. I mean, the good news is the vote wasn't, let's move ahead with Core Pack as it is. The vote was, in principle, this seems like a good idea, but needs to be, worked out.
100%. We had a binary summit. I forget when. It feels like forever ago.
December?
Again, I think.
Yeah.
Like Kai's comment on time is irrelevant these days. It's just a figment of our imagination. We had a binary summit where we talked about tooling like Volta and MVM, and in which case we were talking about how people might customize their distributions and like swap in and out things that they want to be bundled in their version of Node. And this is a subset of that. This is only scoped, like this tool is only scoped to these packages. So I don't know if this gets us all, I don't know what this gets us, since it sounds like we're gonna have to create another tool on top of this to manage those other depths that are bundled in Node. So it goes against sort of what I thought the outcome was of that binary summit, based on the fact that it's managing a subset of what we were talking about. And then also I feel like there was a whole bunch of things that essentially were agreed upon by saying that they want to add core back, like including all the things that I referenced there. So anyways, not to dive into that too much, but I've been meaning to like write up a full synopsis of that and tried to be as obviously as mindful of the position, to make sure that like it doesn't come off as, I just don't know if it's a great thing for those communities, to be honest. Like especially the way it's shipped with the jumper binaries, like those are very confusing, and this will actually break npm installs. So if we see that there's a binary already placed, we are not going to we're not going to try to override it. So if you try to npm install yarn and it's already been placed by Node, we no longer manage yarn npm. So that's going to be confusing for the community. That's going to be a problem for the community. That's going to create some churn. And yeah. Anyways, sorry.
No, that's all valuable. I look forward to reading what you put together, because I think it's really, yeah, it's interesting.
I actually missed the binary summit, and I wish that I had attended.
Yeah, it seemed like it wasn't going to be specifically about this, but then if I remember correctly, the binary summit ended up talking a lot about package manager stuff.
It was primarily actually like at a higher level. Like, what depths do you want? Like, do you want to swap out something like more core to that?
Yeah, interesting. Well, as you can see in that last pull request that I pasted in there, and maybe most of you have already seen it, there's a lot of discussion and some strong feelings.
Yeah, no, I was definitely following along with that discussion and vote. So yeah,
we were too. I just didn't say much. let the steering committee steer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does need to be approached cautiously, though, for sure. Okay, let's, I guess, move on to the agenda. Actually, first item on the agenda, speaking of things that need to be approached carefully, after a meeting last week, I created an issue. We had discussed the idea of, maybe creating an ESLint plugin or adding to the Node ESLint plugin or preset. To flag certain things like, if you're importing like rimraf or something in Node 16, just to highlight that like, hey, that's actually built in. You probably don't need that. But there was some interesting discussion in that issue, primarily from Jordan. And he was just pointing out that like, yeah, there are definitely some things to consider in doing that as well. Like, for example, does that de-incentivize someone to keep maintaining, a package that's been pulled into core? Is that the intended effect? We just need to, if we were to do that, consider all of those things and be very careful about it. So I'm not actually sure if it is something we should do or not.
Yeah, I wonder, and this is part of the reason why I had reached out to Kai. So I don't know if you want to maybe just give a little bit more context, and we can kind of discuss a little bit further. Or whoever.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the general idea, like as I kind of gave in that one example, is like we pulled a couple things like make derp, rimraf. We're talking about one of the recursive copy implementations.
These are basically sorry to interrupt. I was just going to elaborate, like these are packages that somebody's already built that provides us functionality. We've taken that functionality, brought it into core, and we want to let people know, like, you don't need to use this package if you don't want to, because it's native to Node.
Right. Yeah, and this is something we talked about this, I think, actually in Montreal. We had a tooling, roundtable kind of meeting. I think it came up as an idea there. Something that's been in the back of my mind for a while. Actually, the reason that I brought it up last week is because I was reading a book, like a new book about Node, where they were talking about Node 15, I think was referenced. And in one of the examples, the author like pulled in make derp to recursively create a directory. I just saw it and thought like, oh, you don't need that anymore, which was interesting because he was clearly trying to avoid external packages in a lot of his examples. And then he pulled that one in. So just, that's what made me think of this. So yeah, that's kind of the context. Is that something we want to do? Is that not something we want to do? It's also been discussed as like, is that something that, the NPM CLI flags when you install one of those packages, or do we leave it up to the package author to add like a post install notice that brings that up? So these are kind of all the things we're talking about.
Yeah, the post install seems to make sense to me, like a natural, and most friendly to maintainers sort of approach.
Yeah, if the package isn't being deprecated, and they're not changing their support level, like based on what Jordan had said there, like especially like we don't want to disincentivize package maintainers, especially if it's not a one-to-one implementation. Like there might still be usefulness in a package, and like, yeah, I think I said it before when we brought it up last week, maybe, or the week before, that it's just, we want to be mindful that we're not like, there is any like hurt feelings along the way here, like in terms of like, we pulled this in and now we're like recommending you don't use that, like that package. Like it seems a little bit odd because like these two things should be distinct and different. They really don't have that much of a connection. Like, dude, like we're making a connection between them, but are they actually a one-to-one mapping? Like, is the package the exact same in Node core?
I think in some cases, yes, and in some cases, no. So yeah, definitely that's a consideration. I think that the intention, like from my perspective, is more just like, how do we raise awareness that these things are now available and don't necessarily require installing a third-party package? Like they're in the docs, and that's great. But sorry, Kai, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I don't think that ESLint, like the linter, is the right place to do this, at least as an official contribution from Node itself. That feels a little bit like it'd be different if it was a community member just being like, oh, like I'm gonna add this tool to make a PR to Mystica T's ESLint plugin, because there is like Node deprecated something, a rule already in there that actually flags deprecated syntax for, or deprecated APIs in whatever version of Node you're using. I do like the idea of the post install script, or just like leaving it up to the community in that case. But also totally see the merit of trying to increase education and awareness. I just don't know if the linting step, since it's hooked into CI and can prevent builds and everything else, I don't know if that's the place to do that personally.
I think the reason why we also go ahead.
Go ahead, Marcy. No, go ahead.
I think Ben noted like it would be amazing that lists, by doing it through ESLint, we could easily create a path for you to upgrade all, like, or change, let's say, your entire project over from one, from that specifically including the package to utilizing the native built-in, right? So like that was kind of like one benefit in going this route, I believe, and then which makes sense. But I do like, I do kind of agree that like it should almost be like, I don't know. I don't know. Like I feel like the maintainer should be brought along this journey, and like maybe it's up to them to like push you to that, or like we somehow get buy-in from them to create the ESLint plugin specifically for that package, right? And so we create one of these for every time like we pull in something like McDerp, and we're like, hey, can we reach out, tell the maintainer that we're also considering creating like a ESLint plugin that's going to make it easy for people to transition to the native, and if they're okay with that, then maybe we move forward. But I don't think we should move forward if like somebody feels like you know, yeah.
That was brought up last time too. Just that, yeah, we would probably want to get buy-in from the maintainer first before doing it. But at that point, then just make it a post-install script, maybe, or they could in their package. We have tried
both.
that.
I think we said both, right? Like the both is the optimal, right? So like anybody that doesn't know about it would get that that message, but also like having a tool that helps you migrate and like audit is also good to have.
We did actually try that though in one case, and we're told no. Which
but that's
is,
like one case, right? Like maybe that's the one off, right?
yeah, I guess to me as a user, the frustration there is like, I would like to know these things when I'm writing my code. And it's, I guess, frustrating that maybe it would be not an inclusive kind of list of things that were now available to me in the platform. But I get that it's also very, it's a tricky issue for sure. Yeah.
So where this does,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kai. You were first.
I was just going to say, there's also the friction of, I think it increases friction in that if, the maintainer does release like a security release or something, and you decide to use it, then there has to be some way to let the rule know whether that's an ESLint ignore comment or, something in the config to opt out of that. And that does seem like a pain. I don't know. There's just extra work involved.
Yeah, I think what I was thinking before in this, and I just thought about it again, is that it sounds like the problem is we have packages that are named the same thing as a native utility, right? As a native module. So packages in the ecosystem that are going to be named the same, and we don't have like reserved. Like the concern might be that even you don't know that you're like requiring, or you're trying to require, let's say, a dep. Let's say you phantomly installed McDerp somehow because we've hoisted your packages, and now you try to require it, and it was a top level. I think McDerp is under FS, right? So, but for other instances like crypto or other kind of modules that have gotten created, it might be confusing to the ecosystem if there's two things like the native module and then the ecosystem module. And I think NPM is oftentimes actually given or gifted those namespaces back to the project to ensure that like that confusion sort of goes away.
So none of the things that we've pulled in, and by we I mean this group,
our top level,
just under top level packages.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, for example, MakeDerp is part of the FS MakeDir command with the recursive option, and RimRaf is similar. So
I do really like the idea of an educational ESLint plugin, like on each release that could help you upgrade. I do think that's a cool idea to explore.
Yeah, like it doesn't even necessarily have to be like, hey, you're using this package and that's an error or a warning or whatever. Even if it was just informational, like, did you know you might be able to do this without a package?
I mean, that plugin is opt-in by the maintainer. Like you are saying, like whoever is adding that to your rule set is saying, if somebody tries to, or I see that you're using McDerp, and we are using this node version, we know that like it should be, that's wrong, right? So it's kind of like at the project level, somebody's making that decision and opting in if that tool exists, if we create that.
Right. That was kind of also my thinking with the ESLint rule, is that like, I'm not suggesting that that should be like enabled by default or something, or that it should produce an error in your build. I think that would be going too far. Yeah, really the goal that I had in mind with this was just how do we let people know that these new things are available. Anyways, I don't know if we're going to solve that today. There was some interesting discussion on that issue after our last meeting. So definitely, you know, as I mentioned in the issue, like we're definitely going to, you know, discuss this a lot more before we move forward with anything. We're not just planning to do this. So yeah, I don't really know what the outcome there. Like I don't see like a path forward right away at this point. I think we would need to consider it a little bit more. So yeah, unless anyone has anything else they want to bring up on that topic, I would suggest we just move on to the next point. Okay. All right. Sorry, there's some construction noise outside my window. Okay, what is next? Recursive copy is next on the list, which I guess is me. I have no update on this. Haven't had a chance to work on this since the last meeting. Actually, if I am going to work on anything too at the moment, I think I'd like to put time into argument parsing to get that, you know, over the finish line. So probably won't be looking at recursive copy actively until we're further along with that. So yeah, no update there for me. Next on the agenda is a better way to detect a process is exiting, which Ben was had volunteered to take on. He's not here, so I guess we'll just skip over that for today. Oh, and then I guess up next is him as well with source map v3 support. I don't think there's any, I don't know if that needs to still be on the agenda, does it? I guess the only thing that was still ongoing with that was the work to backport that to node 14, which I think was kind of stalled on.
I thought there was some sort of like race condition or some sort of like memory, like test that was failing, like yeah.
So he was,
okay.
I think he was kind of exploring whether or not that was a false positive. If we could, you know, if they could move forward with back merging that with that test failing. That was kind of where that one stood, I guess. Yeah, since Ben's not here, I guess we'll just skip over that as well. I am happy that source map support is in node 16 though.
Is the flag, so that means the flag's gone? It's no longer under experimental flag? Or is it still under?
There's a flag to turn it on, but it's not labeled as experimental anymore.
Right.
And in V16, it's using I guess the issue or the thing that we changed was in V14, it was sort of like an interleaved source map where it would show you like, here's your line of JavaScript, and then below would be like, here's your line of TypeScript, and the whole trace was sort of in that format, which I think doesn't really match I don't know if there's actually a spec for stack traces. It seems like there's some work around building one. So that's kind of the change between 14 and 16 is in version 16, you just get the TypeScript or whatever it might be, stack trace, which seems like it would be easier to consume by other tools like Datadog or Sentry or whatever.
Cool.
So yeah, anyways, I guess as any other topics of discussion on the node 16 front from anyone?
No, I guess, one announcement that we missed that might have already been said in other places, like end of life node 10 today announcement. Like, that's nice to know. Nice.
Yeah.
In case you're like, have to go check your engines of your packages. Maybe you want to upgrade, cut a major or something, and stay up to date and save yourself some head. We're definitely looking at that as well. Like npm obviously is a bit of a laggard in terms of our support of Node. So like we try to actually have a broader scope than Node does even for support Windows. So, but yeah, that's definitely, if you've got tools that had Node 10 and greater as your engines in your engines field, like feel free to drop it. Obviously cut a new release, but yeah, cool.
There were a few interesting things that came out of that. Like I saw James Snell on Twitter was saying if you use TypeScript, the minimum supported lib version now is ES 2019 across all the active versions of Node. So that's pretty nice. I know we're definitely planning to drop Node 10 support and create React app in the next major release. So it'll be 12 and above.
Yep. Good day all around.
Yeah. Plus all supported versions of Node support ES modules.
Yeah. We'll get there. Well, just need the ecosystem to also migrate.
Right. Well, I think this will help a lot though, now that it's, there's no actively supported version of Node that doesn't support them. So I know that's, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it's progress towards the goal, I think.
There's a lot of packages that need to be updated. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Cool.
A few, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I should have had that announcement at the beginning. I totally forgot. But...
Me too.
And I'm actually, apologies, I'm probably going to have to drop here in a couple of minutes, but I would love to hear about the next items specifically. And
I just wanted to get all of that stuff out of the way so that we can spend the rest of the meeting talking about argument parsing. So yeah, Joe, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much of an update. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, my son's birthday and a bunch of other things, but I did today create some issues that were kind of born out of that first PR, which I dropped into the chat. So if I did it partly because like Jordan jumped in and had a couple of comments, and so I didn't want to just make assumptions about what choices we're going to make. I thought I would just create issues for some of them. So if you look at the issues in the parseargs repo, I'll look here. What do we want to do with 3 or more dashes? I know in the FAQ, the idea was that you would just strip off the first 2 and pass back whatever's left. But I thought I'd open that just for discussion. Establish error message approach, which I'm not used to writing tooling libraries. So if anybody has any suggestions on what we want to do with that, or I can just, we can just have the messages in there. I guess it's not going to get too complex here. So I can just take out my whoops and put something else more informative in there. Ben had also mentioned like how to handle other environments like Electron. Ben had suggested C8 for code coverage preference. I don't know if anybody has any alternatives or if I should just work on that. So my thinking was if I just busted these things out in issues, we could land this PR and then just start to move forward on the things that were raised there.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of that. I think that's the best way to go here, is just like identify all the feedback and then just move forward.
Yep. Okay, cool. I will do that. I will make a comment on this particular PR and land it. And then we can just start kind of tackling the issues. And, if you want to jump in, Ian, feel free to do whatever. Or if you want to pair, I'm open to whatever.
Yeah, I'd love to start kind of chipping away at this. So I think we maybe need to make it clear too that like this is like very much work in progress, right? Like we shouldn't be, for PRs and things like that, it shouldn't be like, nitpicking every little detail and whatever, because like, yeah, this is like very, very work in progress. But I think you're on the right track here. Capture the feedback. We definitely don't want to ignore the
Yeah.
feedback. Yeah, capture it, move on. We'll address those changes in a future PR, or someone's welcome to make a PR of their own to address it if they want.
Just so I understand, is this working on a new API for passing arguments on the CLI?
Yeah,
this is the polyfill.
Yeah, sorry, Darcy. No, the idea is that we're trying to get some argument parsing capability built into Node. And so, yeah, we're basically building, like Darcy said, the polyfill here first, so we can start to experiment with it. And it's a little easier to work here than in the main Node.js repo. So yeah, we want to kind of get it into a place where we're happy, and then open up a PR in the main repo.
Yeah, and I think keep it like generic enough too that we're not putting anybody out of business or anything. We're just trying to have a baseline so that people don't need to reach for something more if they're just doing some simple argument parsing.
Yeah, we don't want to anger big argument parsing. We don't want to get on their bad side.
Yeah. Cool. And I'm gonna open a quick PR to the README just to add like a early work in progress flag at the top so that it's clear.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Cool. So what's that?
I was just going to say, I forgot whether or not we decided to move forward with the main args part of this proposal, and because I know Roy had and unfortunately had to drop, I think, and so I'll be on for another minute or two. But I know that he had some work and a PR ready with a bunch of that done already. I'm wondering if that could just go move forward by itself, and we can pull that out of this. Because like it seems like something else we should track separately of the parse args, even though they are very much tied together, and like we want to use the main args value if it exists, and that's like the implementation there is very bare bones, simplified, pared down, but it would be good to like get that even landed in Node because it feels very like that to me feels very straightforward.
What you're saying kind of rings a bell, but it's not clear to me. But I also would ask, is there an issue related to this that should be on the agenda and we can discuss, or what?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we should have a separate issue. It's actually in the README of the parse args repo. There is a reference to main args and the initial main args proposal. Like, so back when this first got kicked off with Chris, Ben and Roy collaborating on this, I know Isaac got involved as well and said like, hey, there might just be a good first pass and a first iteration on this, which is to do that slicing. Every Node School tutorial starts off with like, how do you get the arguments you need out of the process argv, and it's like immediately telling you to like slice this up because there's extra information there you don't care about. So it's like main args would be exactly the set of arguments that we actually care about, and that is, I think, can move forward independently of this. And as far as I knew, and unfortunately Roy's not here to like let us know where that went, I think he already had the work done to actually support that. So maybe we can create an issue separately for that and just track it and make sure that gets put there.
Yeah, I recall there being like an issue or a PR or something around main.
I can't find it. I'm looking at the links that you had in the README. Oh, and I see you have something linked here. What is this? Process.
That's just that's just within the README itself. We have basically two definitions of things we would introduce with this work. So like util.parseargs should actually be leveraging what main args if it lands. I think it should independently of parse.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we have one of the issues I created. Oh, where am I? I'm in the wrong thing here. Is I think this was mentioned. Ben said, how do we handle other environments like Electron? So maybe that's related, because I think he was saying that's the suggestion that Roy had made in Chris's PR. So real quickly, Kai, some context. there was a lot of thought that went into this work. And Chris Hiller, who was a part of the tooling team, did a bunch of work with a PR to Node, and there was a lot of conversation and some like blocking comments and like a TS vote needed. And then Chris kind of just walked away, and we kind of stepped back. That PR was closed. I think it's linked to in the README. But what I was going to say is, I think that Roy commented on that PR with an example of what he was doing, and I use that in this initial PR. So anyway, my point is, I created an issue here that Ben mentioned. Maybe other environments we might want to process the initial kind of process.env stuff a little differently in case there are different environments. So maybe that's what you're saying, Darcy, that initial kind of grab. And we may need to flesh that out further in this issue, and can, if Roy's got work already on it, then that's great.
Yeah, just the tracking issue, like just to track it either independently of this would probably be good, because I think that, yeah, like Roy could potentially kick that off. By the way, he'll be up for a little bit next week, I think, so you won't have time, I'm sure, to work on anything. Yeah, it would be good just to independently push that forward, and then focus just on the parse args and like polyfill that polyfill parse args, or sorry, polyfill main args into the consumer parse args. Yeah, implementation. So. But yeah, I think that that's important. We don't necessarily need to land main args, but I feel like it should be there. It's honestly one of those things that I think is just like extra work that everybody does, and it cleans things up so much. And then I think that the parse args work obviously is gonna like unlock that much more just out of the box for folks that are building like command line tools. So
yeah. And then we can put in an ESLint rule that when you use yargs, we tell you not to use it anymore. And then Ben comes to the meeting.
Well, yeah, that he's not here, so I consider that to be his vote of approval, right? Like, so
yeah.
That totally makes sense.
We talked about it, Ben.
Yep.
Moving that forward separately. Go ahead. Okay.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if you need more help on this, but I'd be happy to. This is something that sounds really fun to work on and really impactful, and I'd be happy to lend a hand if needed.
Cool, that would be great. I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about too that I think would be helpful for this work and might be a good, like, first steps, or I guess would just be helpful to move things along, is like the test cases. If we just started adding test cases and then do red green refactor kind of stuff, could probably move it along pretty well. But anyway, if anybody wants to throw something at this, I'm gonna merge this PR. Feel free to use the tooling Slack to chime in if anybody's going to work on anything. I'm going to try to get more work done next week as well, and we can just tag team it.
One last thing on that before I run, because I'm already late. I know that the last time we talked about this, I think we talked a lot about the short options. And I know Ben opened up an issue about that and making the case for us supporting that. I think I had a to-do that I never followed up with to either add to the README or sort of the design of this API to take a pass at like what that would look like. And I think that still needs to be done based on the fact that shorts still are like it's confusing, and the fact that you're able to define, at least the way that API is documented today, that like a short can be defined as multiple characters, and that's not the case. That we should make the opinion that and update the doc to say that a short op is always a single character, and that it gets parsed into essentially and will map to individual characters. And so it's at that point, I think I have to write the doc to basically say that like a short can be aliased to another argument, or another option. So I think I had that as a to-do. So I'll definitely take a pass at that when I get some time here, probably in the next week or two.
Great. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I think that makes sense. I think short ops is important. It'd be good for us to have.
And that shouldn't, I don't think that affects like the initial work as well, Joe, because I don't think you were like on that yet. So it's like an extra option to essentially change the returned values, right? So cool. Okay, got to drop though. This is great.
Yeah, thanks, Darcy. Talk to you soon.
So this is the last thing on the agenda. So do either of you have anything else you want to add on this topic?
No. I guess I'll just say, Kai, I don't know if you're in the tooling Slack. There's a whole nother Slack.
Yeah, I think you sent me an invite.
Okay, cool. Feel free to join the tooling channel. And if anybody is going to tackle something, it might not be bad to just chime in there.
Sure.
So we're not doing the same thing. And it would be great, to the more, what do they say? Many hands make light work or something. So
sounds good to me.
If you merge this PR, I'll take a look at this weekend.
Perfect. I will do it as soon as we hang up.
All right. Any last minute business announcements? Anything?
Nope.
Thanks for including me in this and inviting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
hey,
thanks, Kai.
You're welcome anytime.
Yep, happy to have you. All right.
Okay, yeah, let's leave it at that then. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Cheers, y'all.